cutie, I'm back. Today I thought we would go over the best and the worst books that I read in 2023. If you're new here, welcome to my channel and welcome to The Cute Life. I'm your cult leader, Leah. If you're not new here, thank you for returning for another cult meeting. Today, I thought it would be fun to go over the best and the worst books that I have read over the past year in 2023. And all of these books I have done in-depth videos on, and I will link them in the description below in case you haven't seen them. Okay, let's get started. And let's get started with the worst books that I have read in 2023. The first one is actually a very recent video that I did. It's Unbirthday, The Twisted Tale of Alice in Wonderland. Now, all of these Twisted Tales, all of the Disney books, like the Villain series, you know, they're not the greatest literature. They are written for young adults. But I feel like that shouldn't matter. They should still be good stories. There's lots of young adult novels that are amazing stories. These are not amazing. All of the Disney books are very full of holes, like maybe they couldn't explain some stuff, so they just wouldn't. Or maybe they felt, it's just for kids, doesn't have to make sense. This one in particular had all of that. Holes that never got filled in. And the other reason I particularly didn't like this book is it bothered me that it was very much pushing a particular political ideology. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for. And I don't know that that belongs in a young adult novel or kids stuff. Like, could we let them, you know, at least get a little experience under their belt, acclimate to the world they live in a little before we start shoving our propaganda into their little brains? Anyway, so besides the fact that the story itself just wasn't great, on top of that, it had, you know, other motives that were fairly obvious. Okay, so that was the second to the worst book that I read this year. The absolute worst book that I read this year is Courage is Calling by Ryan Holiday. I hated this book. If you saw my video, you already know why. It just was so hypocritical. It came out, I forget what year, 2021, 22-ish. It felt like maybe 2020, I mean. It felt very much like he had written this book before 2020, and then all of the stuff that happened that year happened, and then he had to like go back and make sure to shove in some, you know, language that, you know, made sure that everyone else knew he was on board with everything. And not only did it suck because of that, it sucked because I've read his popular book, which is The Obstacle is the Way, which is a great book. It had none of that stuff in it. It had no hypocrisy in it that I could pick up on. And it just made it that much more disappointing to go from like a really great book of his to like a terrible book. So that's the two worst books that I read in 2023. Let's move on to a happier subject. The best books that I read in 2023. Now, both of these books that I got were gifts from my husband Christmas that year. So I should have known I was gonna love them. My second favorite book that I read actually isn't technically a book. It's a story in this book, The Grimm's Complete Fairy Tales. So these are the original stories that a lot of the Disney movies are based on. I read the Cinderella story and I did a video on it, and it was nothing like the Disney version, which I love. I love the Disney Cinderella, but this one was completely different and very interesting. There was actually a horror aspect to it, and I'm assuming, I've heard, you know, this is the case, that pretty much all the Grimm's Brothers fairy tales are somewhat like that. So I'm super excited. This next coming year, I'm going to be doing a lot of the short stories that are in here. I'm so excited to get the original story of Snow White and Sleeping Beauty, and then a bunch in here that I have never even heard of. So, oh, I'm so excited. Okay, now, the absolute best book that I read in 2023 is The Wind in the Willows. This book was so good. It was funny, it was entertaining, and I believe this is written for children, but there's so much that adults can glean from children's stories, I think, and it's not written in a childish way at all. There are pictures, but they're cute and they don't take up like too much space. And the reason I wanted to read this was because one of my more favorite Disney movies, The Adventures of Mr. Toad, is based on Wind in the Willows. And the character, Mr. Toad, I love him even more now that I've gotten an even more like in-depth look into the character, and I feel like even that much more attached to him, so that when I see the movie or I go on the ride at Disneyland, yeah, it makes it that much more enjoyable because you understand more the symbolism and where Walt Disney actually got these ideas from. So yeah, those are the best books I read this year and the worst books I read this year. This coming year, like I said, I'm going to be doing a lot more fairy tales. I have a few more of the Disney books. I want to finish up the Villains series. Hopefully those aren't as disappointing as some of the Disney books have been. Disney's been a little disappointing in a lot of aspects lately. Anyway, but I am gonna finish that series because I can't start a series and not finish it. I also have the Prince Philip book to read, which I am excited about because the Prince Eric book was pretty good. So anyway, those are some of the books that I read this year. I'm looking forward to the coming year and all the books that I get to read, and I hope you will join me for my Beauty and the Bibliophile series where I summarize the books while I do my makeup. And again, all the videos that I did on these books will be listed in the description box below. If you liked this video, let me know by giving it a thumbs up. It's how I know what kind of videos to make. Make sure and subscribe and hit the notifications bell so that you won't miss the videos I'm going to be doing on more of these types of books. And I will see you in the next one. Bye!